Yes.
Jason Brown,
Here.
Terry Honeycutt,
Here.
and Jamie Heck.
Here.
We have a quorum. If you'll rise to say the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will entertain a motion in a second to approve the agenda.
I'll motion. Second.
Yeah, there's a lot of J's on it, yeah.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor? Next is the consent agenda. I need a motion and a second to approve. Motion. Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jamie. A motion and a second. All in favor? Seven. And our first action item from Mrs. Hampton.
Yep.
Policy update.
Policy 2024 policy update. So this is the third time we're looking at it. Anytime we do big policy updates, I always like the board to see it a couple of different months and talk about if there's any concerns. Most of these policy updates have to do with legislative changes from session when that ended in June, and SBA worked on some policy updates. So we talked about them last month. I don't see any concerns with any of them. And most of them, like I said, are just semantics and wording changing to meet those changes in Senate policy changes.
Questions or comments? If not, then can I have a motion to approve NSBA 2024D policy update?
Make a motion.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Terry. A motion and a second. All in favor? So moved. Next is approval of the 2024 and 2025 adult meal prices.
Correct. So we talked, over the summer, we always look at meal prices. We did not change meal prices this year. However, we did go through a food service audit with DESI last spring, which carried over into the summer. And we just got that back. And one of the corrective actions was that we were not charging enough for our adult meal prices. So there's a calculation sheet that we do. It's based on our food reduced lunch kits, how much we charge, what we get, how much revenue we bring in, how much we get charged for each meal. So we were significantly low on our adult meal prices. So we need to increase that 47 cents, which would be $3.72 for an adult meal at all of our buildings.
Questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the adult meal prices as presented?
I'll motion.
Is there something?
Second.
Good. Same stuff. All in favor? Thank you. Next is fire alarm bid.
Correct. So we've got quite a bit of fire alarm work we need to do, both at primary and the high school. Tonight I'm bringing you the high school bid. It's an old system. It isn't up to code. The new system with the new construction, they aren't compatible. High school's having issues even trying to run fire drills and making sure that the alarms will shut off or that they'll work properly. So I had Jeff get a quote to see what that looks like and what it is. And I wanted to make sure, because it's $56,277 for everything that we need to get, because it's running wiring, it's the strobe lighting, it connects to the alarm system, it's gonna access to fire department. It does a variety of things, 27 pull stations, 21 smoke detectors, 11 depth detectors, 11 test stations, and then the 42 speakers and strobes. So, plus labor. So the concern that we have is that we want to update to meet code, but we also, whatever part we update, we want other parts that need to be updated to be able to be compatible, if that makes sense. So getting this system will get the high school fully operational, and then it will allow us in future years, if we want to do, because there are more parts that need to be updated eventually, it will be compatible with this system. So this is gonna kind of be the new hub, and as we expand and allow for additional upgrades, all of this will, component will work together. So we also have some issues with the primary, and we're getting some bids on that, but probably that'll be the following fiscal year. As a reminder, we just set tax levy, we aren't putting 10 cents into capital projects, so things like this are coming out of just what we have in savings for capital projects. So, but definitely needed. It's a school safety security measure, and it will make us all feel a little more comfortable that the alarm system will all be compatible throughout the whole district and work properly. And since it's over $50,000, comes to the board for approval.
So I do have one question. It says on this quote that this price is firm for 30 days, but the bid date is August 15th.
It is.
So we're already past.
It's okay. I have an email confirmation that this will stay placed. Because when we first got the bid, we thought, oh, we can't do it, and then we started some fire drills, and I thought, oh, we need to. So the guys already verbally through email confirmed that
So
it
you
will
have
stay
written.
placed.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no.
Yep.
Other questions? Is this the only bid we've got? Or-
It is, because it is the only system that is compatible with what we currently have. So we didn't have options to go out and get multiple bids.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion and a second for approval of the high school fire alarm bid as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Terry. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Good. And a motion and a second. All in favor? Everyone? Some discussion items. First is our academic focus report, elementary academic focus report.
Since you were, Mrs. Rainey and Mrs. Herbie are going to share our academic focus this month. Lots of good info they've got to share.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about what we're doing at the elementary, and I'm going to specifically focus in on MTSS and what we're doing at the elementary. So we'll start off by talking about what that acronym means,
Okay.
MTSS. It means Multi-Tiered System of Supports. In the next few slides, we're going to talk about what that looks like with the tiered support system. But I want to start off by saying that last spring, a group of us, including Dr. McLean, Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Sands, myself, and Mrs. Newman, traveled to a summit specifically on MTSS. We spent 4 days there learning all about MTSS, which is this multi-tiered system of supports, and what we need to do from K-12 to support this initiative that we're doing in the district. So we really just kind of jumped in head first at the elementary to try to get this started and kind of be the leaders for the district on what this can look like. So we're going to start by talking about the tiers. There are 3 tiers. There used to be, and there still is, something out there called RTI, which is response to intervention, which is really what MTSS is correlated to. But if you look up RTI on the internet, you're going to see a different shape of this pyramid. It's actually upside down. MTSS flipped it upside down. It's the same process though, because Tier 1 is focusing in on the majority of our students, all of our students. Tier 2 is a smaller percentage of students. Tier 3 is the very smallest percentage of students in your building and in your district receiving these interventions. Go ahead. So we're going to start off by talking about Tier 1. Tier 1 is a protected time in each and every day. And what I mean when I say protected time is that we are trying to avoid students leaving the classroom environment for a variety of things. Going to the nurse for eye exams, going to special services, going to different things. We want them to be in the classroom environment for this protected time in both reading and math instruction. We have 80 minutes set aside for the reading instruction protected time every single day, Monday through Friday. And we have 60 minutes set aside for math instruction for that protected time. This is all students. Truly, it is about 99.9% of our students that we're focusing in on for this protected time in Tier 1 each and every day. Tier 2 is that smaller percentage of students that is in your population. It is honing in on some groups of students that need something more than what's happening in the classroom with a regular education teacher. We are calling that WIN time. WIN stands for what I need, and focusing in on what the data is that we gathered from iReady, which is our new benchmark tool that we're using here in the district. We got data from iReady specifically in math and in reading, and where the deficits are for kids in a variety of domain areas. For reading, it focused in on things such as phonics, phonemic awareness, comprehension, vocabulary, those kinds of things that we can really hone down and see where kids are deficit at, so we can put them into small groups to try to build those skills up during this time. In math, there are things such as number sense and operations, algebraic thinking, geometry, so that we can really hone in on what those skills are that they need. We are doing WIN time 4 days out of the 5 days in the school week. 2 of those days are going to focus in on small groups for math, and the other 2 days are small groups for reading. We have been doing an RTI time at the building for years, an entire building time, but our focus has been on reading. We need to do some work in math, so that's why we're dedicating 2 days to math. Tier 3, this is our highest level of intervention that's taking place, our smallest populations of students that need this level of intervention. We have a reading intervention daily with small groups of students that are meeting with Mrs. Reynolds. She's utilizing a program called UFly. UFly is from the University of Florida Institute. It is a scripted program. So basically, we take the data from iReady, and it tells us where to start with these small groups of children, and then it progresses forward. So we have students that have very significant needs in 3rd grade, specifically on the areas of phonics and phonemic awareness. And so they start on those lessons that hone in on that and build up. And then we have students that have higher needs that might be like syllables and things like that. It just depends. And so we really decide based on the data that we get from iReady. It's been a great game changer for us, what we're getting from iReady, to decide where they need to be. Also, students are getting their IEP goals and minutes met during this time. And then this year, we added the regulation room so that we could get students some support for behaviors. We have not had a regulation room or a sensory room at the elementary, so this is a new field for us, but we already have students that are benefiting from that environment. So I have some videos that we're going to show you of teachers in the building at grades 3, 4, and 5, specifically focusing in on what we're doing at Tier 1 level with all students in the area of math, because this is a deficit for us. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to build up our Tier 1 instruction. We received some instruction from the RPDC Shay Thomas last year on the area of dot talks and number talks. We're going to see some videos on this, but what this is talking about is subitizing. You all are probably like, what is subitizing? It is teaching students how to quickly recognize how many things or objects are in something without having to count them, like you would see a dice. We know what 5 looks like on a dice. We're subitizing. So we're teaching kids those skills because that is number sense. It's the beginning level of number sense. And it will help them as they get further along in math, specifically in addition, multiplication, subtraction, and things like that. But dot talks and number talks utilize subitizing, mental math, quick thinking math, trying to do things in their head, but then also strategizing and being able to talk about their thinking, justifying why I chose that strategy. So we're going to watch a couple of videos. We're going to start with 3rd grade, Judy Thomas. I couldn't hear very well. Sorry, all of our sound is coming from the speaker right here.
Yeah, I can hear it fine.
You can hear it great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try it.
There are emotions, right? So this, we're thinking. So right now, everybody, I'm trying to write down. Not hard, just hold it. If you know in what way, please. You know, two ways. And if you agree, what are you gonna do if you agree with someone?
So they use hand signals and dot talks and number talks. If they're thinking, they put their fist right here. No, nobody's hand is in the air. They put it right here. If they have a strategy to solve, they put their thumb up. If they have more than one strategy, they add fingers. But it's just between them and the teacher. If they agree with someone, they do this.
Presley, how did you see? Just how did you see? Tell us.
So she put up on the screen for a split few seconds a picture of some dots. The kids are subitizing right now because now she's asking them what they saw. So what they have to do is strategize what they saw. And now she's asking them what they saw, and they have different amounts.
Different, other than 6. So 7, okay? Now, wait just a minute. All right, are you ready to see? Let's get to thinking. 6.
So now they're all thinking about what number they had in their head. And they're looking here to see if they were right. And if they weren't right, why weren't they right? So now what she's going to ask them to do is each of those kids, she wants them to explain the strategy that they used to the group.
So be ready, all right? All right, Chrisley, when you first looked at it, how did you group them together to find the sum? This side, okay, and then, oh, I see this. She said she saw the first 3, next 3, she put them together, and there was 6. Okay, now let's see if Mrs. Thomas can draw this. Yeah, this is the first that I did. Oh, good job. Look at this, look at this. Okay, Chrisley, you said you saw this group first, correct? And then you saw this group, okay? Anyone else saw that one? You see that one? Okay, good. So we would say 3 plus 3 equals 6.
I'm going to stop for just a minute.
What do we say the other way?
You will notice as we go through these videos that teachers are using a lot of vocabulary. We notice on our iReady data that we're deficit in vocabulary. So we want to teach kids through how we're teaching and how they're talking to each other and how they're justifying their thinking by them using that vocabulary too. We're going to skip to the next one. 3rd grade again, this is Mrs. Carter.
Are you okay with sharing how you got 11? Like the strategy that you used to figure that out?
Sure.
All right, Rosalind, we're gonna use this one. It's just a mini picture of what we just saw. So Rosalind, tell me how you came up with 11. What did you do?
Well, I know the 3 and 3 is 12, not 6. And then
Okay, I'm gonna back you up real quick. You said 3 and 3, you mean 3 plus 3. So 3 plus 3 is, did you say 12 first? Okay, so when you did the strategy on your own, did you think 3 plus 3 was 12? Okay, so 3 plus 3 is, so did you like group these two together?
Yeah.
Okay, so we put these two together and did 3 plus 3 equals 6.
And then the other one,
Let's do, and then 3 plus 3 equals 6.
and then I did 6 plus 6. And
Did you say 11 now? Didn't you tell me that you got 11? So do you still agree with yourself, or you think it might be 12?
Teachable moment.
Think it might be 12?
The student thought she saw 11, but when she explained her thinking, she came up with 12.
We'll see. Anybody try a strategy?
Okay, we're going to go on to the next one. Moving into 4th grade, this is Mrs. Miller.
Please talk to your right. Just kind of like, tell me exactly what you mean by kind of bottom lines. So you saw 2 on, so like these 2 on this side, these 2 on this side, 1 in the middle. So you grouped them like these 2 here, these 2 here, and then 1 in the middle. Okay. At the last second, we saw these 3, and then this 1. So how did you come up with 9?
a second. So a couple of important things are coming out of this. Kids are not comfortable explaining their thinking. And so we have to practice it often. We have to put them kind of out there so that they do practice what it's like to explain what's happening inside their head. Because a lot of times kids just want to say, well, I just knew. I just knew that that's what it was. But in fact, something's going on up in there. So getting them to explain their thinking. The second important thing is wait time, which is challenging for teachers sometimes because some kids need a long amount of wait time. But that's what these teachers are doing. They're kind of waiting it out to allow students to explain their thinking and justify their thinking. Those are key terms that are on the MAP test too. Justifying, explaining, analyzing, and strategizing. So we're trying to do some of those things through here. 5th grade is up next. Mrs. Jones. So she's going to fast forward a little bit here. He ends up drawing 32 dots. That's what was on the screen.
Okay, show me how you saw them. How did you see those in your mind?
I saw like each 4.
In groups of 4?
Yeah.
Okay, so did we want to have maybe another row down here?
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. You can draw that real quick and circle that. You're doing all right, bud. Okay, fantastic. So you saw groups of 4. Go ahead and have a seat. We're going to look at this a little bit, okay, bud? All right, so let's say Kaden said you saw groups of 4, so we could have, how do we write that? 4? Go slow for me so I can get it all on the board. 4 plus 4. How many 4s did I have in all? I had 8 4s in all. And how many dots did you say you saw? 32. So we're going to put a 32 here. Is there any other way I could write 8 groups of 4? We saw 8 groups of 4. Is there any other way I could write that? John?
So she's looking for other answers that come up, or other strategies that come up with the same answer. Teaching kids that there's multiple ways to solve problems to get the same answer. So what did we notice while we were recording these things? And what have we noticed? Because we started out last year with the training, and then the 4th quarter I asked teachers to just try it out. Do a little bit of this in your classroom and try it out. And then this year I've actually asked them to implement it full force. Dot Talks is the first level. Number Talks is the second level. So it's taking the skills that we've learned with subitizing and looking at dots and creating equations and applying it to actual math problems. So what do we notice? They're thinking independently because it's a mental math thing. They don't talk to each other. They work it out on their own. They're strategizing. They're realizing that there's multiple ways to solve problems because when we are thinking, we're only thinking of the way that's in our head. That's it. But when we hear somebody else talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Or even the students that struggle to come up with ideas, it helps them process through some of those ways. And kids are listening to each other, which is a skill that needs to be developed stronger anyway. Turning and looking at the people that are doing the presentation and explaining their thinking. Listening skills. They're utilizing math vocabulary to explain their thinking, and they're helping their peers to learn. So I should give a big shout out to Ryan Word because he helped me put these videos in here, and I didn't realize how untech savvy I am until he helped me. So definitely appreciate that. Also a big shout out to our teachers because we've asked a lot of them this year with all of the new things that we're doing with MTSS, with iReady, with Dot Talks and Number Talks, but they're doing an amazing job, and I'm proud to call them my people at OGE. Do you have any questions?
Great, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's nice, it's fun to get inside the classroom, to see it.
Stop by, you can watch it in person. Thank you.
Next item is the board policy regulation, and I'm going to say it, reconciliation of materials.
Yes. So we are revamping a policy that we already have, in hopes that we don't need to use it, but if we do, that we have something in place. So, there is a lot of, in the suburban of Kansas City, there's a lot of, conflict around, materials and reading materials in libraries and what our students have access to. So, our old board policy essentially just kind of said if you don't like a book, you can complain to administration. This policy outlines what that would look like, and we utilize what a lot of the other schools who are going through this process frequently are using. So essentially it creates a media review committee, and so if somebody has a concern with any type of text or book that is provided to students, they can submit a form with a consideration of materials. And so then it goes through this process where this committee team is going to have a certain amount of time to review, come together, discuss, determine if it's school appropriate, age appropriate for whatever context, whether it was the library or classroom, whatever it was in. So really this is trying to be proactive, that we have this already in place in case we do have concerns come towards us. You know, it's kind of a trickle effect. In the Kansas City area, a lot of, at least some of the school districts we worked with a lot on developing this, they have, one semester they had, over 30 book reviews requests a month. So it was daunting, it was time consuming, so we wanted to come up with a process and procedure that would help our staff make sure that we're doing it equitable, under board policy, make sure we're meeting students' needs, but also giving parents a voice if there are concerns. So it does have an appeal process too that can eventually come to the school board for a policy review. And long story short, it essentially just is going to kind of help outline us and what we need to do. This follows under legal guidance, as well as what our current board policy was, just outlining more specifically what we feel like we need as a district to help support our librarians. It also outlines how they review literature before purchasing to make sure that it's appropriate too. And it is challenging. I know from past, it was an award-winning book, and when we reviewed it and brought it to the library, we thought, oh, even though it's award-winning, probably not age appropriate for that library that it was in at the time, previous school district. So this is just outlining that process, what we will do as a district, and how we will collaborate with families who might have a concern with what's going on, and trying to open up those lines of communication. So this is just a discussion, just to take a look at it, and we'll bring it back to approve it at a different time. Any questions or concerns?
Next is the 24-25 school calendar.
Next is, school calendar. So when we approved the school calendar back in January, we did put contingent on homecoming because we didn't have homecoming date. The conference was realigning some things. So homecoming has been set, but also since then graduation has been set. So once homecoming was changed, we kind of just left that as a space holder for our hours, but then we published what we published to staff and to students did have, especially at the beginning of the year, the right homecoming date, which is homecoming 25th, October 25th. And then also with graduation, we had updated where we typically hold graduation, they're having a national event this year and not allowing anyone to host graduation. So we were kind of scrambling. Mr. Salmon, we reached out, I know we updated the board too, reached out to numerous different locations to determine how and where we could host. We considered hosting here, but with construction project going on, didn't feel that that was the best. So we do have a graduation location at UCM. But the date available is Monday, May 12th. So it does move it. Graduations typically would have been that Saturday the 10th. And our previous calendar had to be announced graduation earmarked for Saturday the 10th, but it is changed to Monday the 12th. So we will make those changes and update specifically graduation, just to let people know when graduation will be.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So when we make revisions, and I understand we are gonna make revisions, is there any reason we couldn't put a revision date on materials? I mean, most of the time you do when something's revised, that's all I'm asking is I don't understand why we can't put. That way parents know, we all know
Yeah.
when.
Yeah, we've got a spot on here at the bottom that's right now marked out. It says BOE approved 1/22/24. So we'll update that and put that, especially with the graduation, and send out the graduation's been changed for sure.
Well, and I'm not just saying that, so yes, we will approve it, but I'm also saying like a revision date. So if you revise a document, normally there's a revision date. What date is the most current? So we can put BOE approved, that's fine, but.
So usually we wouldn't have a revision, it would be approved. So usually it would be,
But all revisions don't have to come to the board to be approved, right? So you
This was
could
ju- this-
revise the document.
usually we wouldn't, usually we always would. This was different, and the fact that when we approved it, we approved with a statement that homecoming will either be this date or this date, we just don't know yet. And so then so there was confusion there, I see what you're getting at. But it was, usually we would have, if we made any change to the actual school calendar. Graduation here in the States, it's not changing the school calendar, it's just notifying people when graduation is.
Right.
If that would change the school calendar, the board approved it and we would put that back out. When we approved it in January, we had said graduation's either gonna be this date or this date, we're gonna earmark it, once it's solidified, we'll publish that out. So it didn't make a change. Probably hindsight, we should have just brought it back in November when we actually, or in February when we had the real homecoming and reapproved it, or waited to then. I think we were concerned not knowing how long that was gonna take. So normally it would just come back to the board, be approved, there wouldn't be revisions without board approval.
Okay.
So going forward, it shouldn't happen again. It would come back here, be board approved, and we would put board approval date on it. And maybe that would help clear that up a little bit.
Well, yeah, because in that way, anyone can see, okay, this is the latest date,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that's what you're gonna look for.
Right.
If me as a parent, I'm looking at this and I put everything in my calendar, if I see that the date is different now, maybe I wanna look through it again, make sure.
Yeah, right, yeah, and from my standpoint, I didn't think that what the board approved went out, because it was just right after that meeting that homecoming was set and solidified, but it is board documents, so somebody got it from board documents. But what we published out, it has never changed. But what was in board documents would have had both of those dates earmarked for homecoming for first initial. So. All right.
Next is MSTA salary benefits report.
Yes, so the next two kind of go together. MSTA, every year, Missouri State Teachers Association puts out the prior year salary and benefits report. So it just allows us as school districts to kind of look and see what the competition is and how we're competing with. And so it's a great document. I shared it with Superintendent Advisory Council just to have them kind of look over it. It's sectioned out by your reporting regions across the state. So we are bundled in the central region. However, because of our location, I think it's important that we look at how we compare in the Kansas City region too. So the central region's in green, and it shows our student enrollment, it shows our bachelor's degree, how many steps we allow, and then it also shows masters, and then it shows career ladder allowed, and your maximum amount of steps. So it just gives you a glimpse of where we might compare to schools similar to our size, but it's not just looking across the state at schools similar to our size. Obviously, we're competing with people in our region too. So in my mind, I'm always trying to compete with Odessa, Pleasant Hill within our conference because they're the closest, but we're also always watching what Green Valley, Blue Springs does, even though we may not have the tax base to be able to compete salary-wise with them. So we do need, so when we look at the central region, it tells us that we're ranked 14th in the bachelor's column, and in the master's column, we're ranked 14th as well, and we are ranked 10th overall. So, and the way that looks at is just, and that's within central region, so that's a lot of our smaller schools in central part of Missouri. Odessa is in there, Pettis County, but then a lot of rural schools, but also goes all the way down to a school of the Osage. When I take those same numbers and put them into the Kansas City metro region, it shows us what we're competing with Jackson County, and we know that those are larger suburban schools. and our city schools, but there are also proximity-wise, some of our closest schools that we have to continue to watch. And so it significantly drops. Of all those schools, we're the lowest ranked. We're ranked 17th out of all of the schools. So that is obviously where we have to kind of monitor our threshold. Where do we want to be in salaries? I'm constantly analyzing where we are compared to our conference schools, even, and especially, like I said, I use Pleasant Hill and Odessa because they're the most similar in our size and they're geographically the closest to us. But otherwise, it just this report just gives us a good threshold of where are we where we want to be. And so when we're talking about, as we lead forward into the next, is tax levy, when we're talking about what we want to do with our salaries and where do we want to be to help us determine what we want, what we need to do with our tax levy in order to increase revenue, to be able to be competitive and make an adjustment with our salaries. So I've got some information here on finances that I'd kind of like to go over. And share just a little bit and have some discussion on some options we have for April and the tax regarding tax levies, and then also try to see and challenge you guys to kind of let me know where we want to go so I can do some additional figuring. So what we've got here is just kind of general overall, where does our revenue come from? So this is all last year's numbers. Totally, it's based off of 23-24. Our total revenue last year was $27,843,000. So you can see between county, federal, state, local, and a little bit of other where our funds come from. When we set our tax levy, I mentioned that 55% of all of our revenue come from setting that tax levy. It's personal property, real estate within our local community. About 36% of our funds, a little over 10 million, come from our state foundation formula. It's interesting to watch the trajectory of that. Just 10 years ago, state and local was way more even, if not stayed a little bit above, but the state keeps paying less and less, and local taxes keep going up and up, property and assessed valuations. We received very little, just $1.7 million in federal money and 2.7%, just under $800,000 in county money too. When we look at our expenditures, just a reminder, we have 4 pots that all of our money goes into. We just set our tax levy, and we set our tax levy with putting money in incidental, and we put money in our debt service. And our debt service is based on a schedule that is the current debt we already have and what we want to pay off. So we just ran another no tax bond, and that was just prolonging that loan of money that we have, and our debt service goes to pay that off. We have a very high debt service rate, $1.89, one of the highest, if not the highest in the state of Missouri. It's aggressive because it pays off our debt quicker, which does save us an interest. But the downside to that is we have earmarked so much to go to debt service, it doesn't give us as much in incidental. And so every year when we do our budget, we never receive enough money in Fund 2, our teacher fund, to pay our teachers, so from the state. So we always end up transferring money from Fund 1 into Fund 2 in order to have enough money to pay our certified staff. But last year, our total expenditures were $31,661,000. Now, $3.5 million of that was we did that prepayment on our bonds to save almost $2 million in interest rates. So the large chunk of that does when I look at revenue versus expenditure, $3.5 million, what was over is due to that. But last year, Fund 1 is our incidentals. We spent $9,026,000, and that's our general supplies, our instructional resources, all of our utilities, and then salaries and benefits of all of our 69 certified staff, which are our paras, custodians, secretaries. And so that is, there's a lot that goes into Fund 1. Our supplies are low. We've done a great job with all of our utility savings, energy savings, to reduce our utility costs. And again, it's because we have much less tax dollars going into Fund 1 because our debt service is so high. Our Fund 2 is our teachers, our college degree state certified employees. So last year we spent $14,443,000 in Fund 2 for 175 teachers and administrators. Fund 3 is our debt service, so this is the debt we have. Last year we spent $7,031,000 paying off debt, interest, principals on past bonds. And then a reminder, 3.5 million of that 7 million is we spent extra than what we normally do in a school year to prepay off some bonds to save some money and interest. And then our Fund 4 is our capital projects, so this is anything facility, any equipment, lease purchases, but also facility and grounds that we do anything to our buildings. Last year we spent $1.1 million in capital projects. So tax levy that we just set tonight, we set 4.47, and we put 2.9 in incidental, and we put 1.86 in debt service. Total assessed evaluation was $238,819,000. So when we look going forward, what do we want to do with our tax levy? In April, we do have some options. These are old numbers. This is Eastern Jackson County, so this is from 2022-23 with assessed evaluations last year, and then everyone's just now setting levies. I haven't updated this. So, but this just kind of gives a glance of where we are. A few of these schools have raised their tax levy, and we have not. And this was based on 2022-23, where our tax levy was 5.15, and we just set for tonight 4.77. So again, these are old numbers, but it still gives an idea of looking at those geographically right around us. And then I also have conference numbers, schools in our conference. And so again, these are old, based off of 2022-23. So we want to make sure that I'll get updated numbers as everybody's setting their tax levy. Everywhere in the state, it's set by September 1st, so most of them set them in August. Jackson County were required the month of September to set those. So I'll bring updated, but it kind of shows, I mean, this is one of those that we don't want to be the highest, but we also don't want to be the lowest, but we have to be competitive in our teacher salaries as well. So one of the options we have that I've been working with Hannah Snyder with Piper Sandler, our bonding company, is looking at the possibility of doing a levy transfer. And we can do a levy transfer. If we transferred 60 cents, this would require voter approval in April, or whatever month, whatever election we decided. April has the best because it's simple majority, 2/3 vote. So if we did a 60-cent transfer, voter approval, to transfer money from Fund 3, which is our debt fund, to Fund 1, which is our general, it would give us an additional $1.4 million. What we have to realize of what that does is it is essentially going to, right now, the way that we have our debt scheduled out to pay off every time we do a no tax bond, we have it so that we're paying off aggressively at that $1.86, but it's so that every 4 to 5 years we have another $25 million in bonding capacity to be able to do another big project. If we transfer 60 cents from debt service to general to give us more money to spend on salaries, it's going to take that 25 million about, I think it's about 9 years to get there. So we have to look around campus and think about our facilities. Do we have the need facility-wise every 4 to 5 years to need the 25 million no tax bond to do more facility projects? Are we to a good maintaining point where we could go every 4 or 5 years and do half that, 10 to million, 12 million project, or wait 9 years, every 9 years doing the 25 million project? So that's a discussion we have to have. Currently, last year, we deficit spent total in Fund 1 and 2, that $739,000. We in the past have been putting 10 cents in Fund 4 for capital projects, which was about $238,000. So if we did the transfer and would generate another $1.4 million, it would kind of leave us with that $360,000 to build back our reserves. So if we remember, our reserves are what we have left over Fund 1 and 2. Reserves are for when we have something big, major happen. In my career, there was a time that the state came back and said, we don't have any money, we freeze you, and they didn't give any more state payments the rest of that year, and districts lost quite a bit in state revenue. It also would help us if Jackson County, if there was ever something that they'd come back and say, mid-year, you owe us money back. That's what we would use those reserves for. We ended last year at 15% reserve, and if you remember when we approved that budget, we are, without making any changes, assuming that we would end this year at 10, if not a little lower percent reserves. And that's getting into that scary zone. So the 60-cent transfer gives us that 1.4 million, which would eliminate our deficit, allow us to put 10 cents in and leave us a little bit for reserves. That doesn't do anything to help us aggressively address teacher pay, staff pay. So that's where the question comes into play when we look at that MSTA schedule of benefits, and knowing what other schools, where they are with salaries, where do we want to be in the next 3 to 5 years with salaries? And I can go and make a preliminary budget based on current assessed evaluation numbers for the next 3 to 5 years to say, this is what we want to get in salaries, this is what our cost is gonna be, and kind of scale it back then. So if we know in 5 years, the board says we want to be at whatever dollar amount for teacher salaries, how do we financially get there? And then, so what does that leave us with, what we need to go to the community to ask for a tax levy increase? Or the other option is to say, well, we really like this plan and we want the 60 cents and let's do that for this year and let's see what happens with Jackson County and assessed evaluation and not do anything very aggressive to staff salaries. That is an option too. We've done the 2.89% increase, which is about $1,000 to the base the past 2 years. So it puts our teacher base at $39,000. The state also says we have to be at $40,000 as a minimum. So and that just puts us at the state minimum. Green Valley's at $43,000. Right now, Odessa's at $40,000. We're below Odessa. So you know, my question to the board is where do we see that our needs and where do we want to be in 3 or 5 years in staff salaries so that I can come up with what's that going to cost us, and then therefore what do we need in a tax levy in order to get the revenue to be able to meet that need.
I think the hard part is actually a two-part question, because obviously we know by looking at this, staff salaries is the biggest piece of the pie of what schools pay. But the hard part is when you're looking at just salary versus school, there's other factors that have to come in terms of student to staff ratio. So if you go look at Green Valley, they might pay $5,000 more, but if they have 5 more kids in every single classroom, they may have less teachers per grade level. So that's something that we would have to balance, because, I mean, yeah, obviously we want to pay staff more, but then the question comes down to, do you want less kids in a classroom versus, you know, making less money, or do you want more kids in your classroom and make more money? I mean, that's simple math, really.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I mean, on paper, it looks great to pay more. If it comes down to taxes and raising a levy, it's great. But as we compare, you know, it's easy to look at a spreadsheet and see, you know, our neighboring towns pay more money, but we have no concept of what's their student to staff ratio. Because I know at Pleasant Hill, we get into like 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, there's some classes that are as high as like 27, 28 kids in a class. And that's tough on teachers. But at the same time, you know, it's nice as a community to also have a lower student to staff ratio, because then your kid's getting probably a better education because they have, you know, 20 kids in the classroom, and that teacher has more time to dive into all 20 kids versus 30 kids.
Right.
So it's really a hard philosophical talk of, it's not just about pay, it also comes into, because I mean, I know, like, I have friends that work at Blue Springs. They make $90,000 a year. They have 40 kids in their PE classes.
Right.
Are there any 40 kids in PE classes at Oak Grove? Probably not. And so that's the hard part. I mean, you get into philosophical talk of student to staff ratio versus pay, and it's easy to see on a spreadsheet that, yeah, we don't pay as well, but then there's benefits that come with, you know, obviously being here too. So
Well, even just sustaining what we have done. So since you know, this ended the 3rd school year since I've been on, we've spent a lot of money, but we've put it into our paras are full time and they have benefits. We've added career ladder, and we've done a $1,000 raise to the base. We increased secretary salaries significantly and custodial. And so we've done we've done a lot of things that Oak Grove needed to do to stay competitive, but we also have to maintain that And we have to, like, when we give raises, that impact, whatever that cost is, if it's $560,000 to the budget, we're gonna have that, it's not one time, that's every year ongoing. So it's also the sustainability piece too. You know, I don't think we're gonna wave a magic wand and ask for a levy increase and give $5,000 raises. But we know that next year we need to give another $1,000 raise to the base to hit the state now new minimum of 40,000. They also have Masters plus 10 needs to be at 46,000. So we'll be close to that, but we'll have to tweak our salary schedule a little bit to meet that need. So there are some concerns definitely on what's the best direction. We've met with the city and we continue to meet with the city on developments that are going in across town. They had a demographer who said that we weren't going to see big growth. School's demographer said we weren't going to see big growth. City's demographer said we were going to see some growth. You know, so that is the other thing we have to keep in mind here. We still have, really looking at our buildings, we still have some space in each building, not a lot. So some of the buildings not very much at all. For growth, if we needed that to happen. So we do have to balance that too and keep in mind, you know, transferring 60 cents really does help us in our general fund, but it puts us to where every 9 years we have 25 million to do a big project. And you know, and we can always go back to voter approval and change that back. But so these are just those options that I think is important for the board to know of and be aware of and determine what's going to best suit what our needs are, where we are financially right now.
I have a thought process. So we came together and we said we're really close to an educational institution in Warrensburg and popping out teachers. So we come up with an idea to incentivize them to come here as student teachers. I think it's great what we have done. So is it possible to just look at this sheet and say, okay, we're not going to compete with Grain Valley and Blue Springs because they're city administrators they think that invisible line means certain homes can't be built on this side of our side of it, and we're building low-income housing, so we're not going to compete, but can we just blow them out of the water with the minimums with bachelor degrees? So can we just be the highest paying minimum bachelor degree and just get those student teachers?
Sure, you can. Your concern is
And we're the same as like Springfield area. So if I'm graduating with a teacher degree and I'm not tied to Oak Grove, why wouldn't I go live in South Central Missouri where I'm gonna get twice the bang for my buck
right.
at the exact same salary?
So the issue with that is, one, your veteran teachers are your most qualified teachers, most experienced, most qualified teachers. So you want to stay competitive across the board so you can retain those teachers. And one of the things we've seen differently, usually you didn't see a lot of transparency or transitioning and movement, transiency among veteran teachers because no school district would take a veteran teacher and pay them at all of their years of service. A lot of them capped it at 10 years. And so even here at Oak Grove, if we had a family move from out of state and somebody came with 25 years of experience, we were only going to give them 10 years because that's just what the practice was. Well, now with the teacher pool being less, all school districts have kind of just waived that. So just in the past year, we've lost 4 veteran teachers, very experienced, very good, very dedicated, who spent a large part of their career here at Oak Grove. We lost them to Blue Springs because they went and took a $30,000 pay bump because they had a specialist in 25 plus years. And Blue Springs wanted teachers and was willing to pay that on their salary schedule, where 2-3 years previously they wouldn't. So we have to stay competitive. We don't want to be the school district. We want new teachers to come. We want to train them. We want them to love Oak Grove. We want them to stay and be veteran. But we also have to have a balance of we need veteran teachers. We need them to stay because we don't want to be the drop stop where every teacher comes and spends 1 or 2 years here and moves on.
So is your goal to equal their salaries?
There's no way we can. No,
So
but we can show our veteran
That's my
teachers.
point.
We can show our veteran teachers that we still have that appreciation. We're continuing to beef up our pay scale
Right.
in all areas, whether you're a first-year teacher or whether you're a veteran teacher. So trying to keep that pay scale equitable is what we have done for years. When we add to the base, it's the same percent trickles through the whole salary schedule, so everybody sees that same percent increase across the board. So and realistically, at that first step bachelor, we're pretty competitive. it's as you get
Yeah.
further that you're
We're
not.
almost the same as every other school, so at 38, why don't we just make that like 46 and meet everyone else, and we're getting those kids.
Because then we
I
have
just
to,
think of Moneyball, where the Royals are not the Yankees, so it's illogical to try to keep
Yeah.
Carlos Beltran from going to
Yeah.
the
it's just,
Boston Red
it's
Sox.
just, it's just doing equitable. If we make our base 46, what does that compression look like for the rest of our salary schedule? One, we can't just set it at 46 and let it just by formula trickle through because we can't afford that. We couldn't afford that. Two, we can't set it at 46 and pay a first year teacher 46,000 when our masters plus 10 teachers aren't
Sure.
making 46,000 yet. So we have to analyze that equitably for our teachers, and we have to make it competitive to recruit new teachers, recruit veteran teachers, and retain our current teachers too.
When does the big fall off happen? Because I know like as you start getting the years of service, they're like we don't do, like schools kind of start doing like increases in their years and like their columns and their rows. And there comes a point where like a teacher with 10 years in Masters Oak Grove versus like a teacher with 10 years in Masters at Pleasant Hill, it's like over a $10,000 difference
Mhm.
now. So like we don't incentivize as much. It's
Yeah.
just like it's a small bump, and we're trying to. That's where I know what you're saying. You're trying to recruit to get them here, but what you would create is like you would just have them be here for like 4 years, 5 years, and they're like, well, I can go make $15,000 more here. And so by trying to incentivize that longevity, that's what gets them to stay. And
My
Don't we
question
lose a
though
lot
is-
of them at 4 or 5 years?
That's
It's
what I was
about
thinking,
where
yeah.
we-
But we're gonna lose them anyway, right? I mean, if we have a good
But-
teacher
and then when we
they're
lose them-
motivated, they're gonna go to Blue Springs
Yeah,
anyway.
when we ask staff when they leave, and we try to figure out, are they going, and a lot of the staff that we've lost less than 5 years are getting out of education, going to their home, where their family and their parents are. It hasn't been necessarily pay. The biggest hit we've seen is those experienced veteran teachers who've been in this district 20-some years, and they've left to go to Blue Springs, because now Blue Springs they're taking that $20,000-$30,000.
And the biggest thing they're doing is they're doing it at the end of their career to maximize their retirement.
Last
I mean,
years.
it's not just, hey, I'm
Their
gonna
last
be
years.
better off
And
for
we
2
can't
years.
compete. We can't
It's
compete.
retire- yeah, we're not gonna
but
catch
we know
that.
we can't compete with that.
Yeah.
But it's really hard when we're sandwiched between Green Valley and Odessa, and we're lower than both of them. I mean, so that's why we try to, advertise low class sizes, tight-knit community. We try all of that PR stuff to kind of show, here's who we are, we want you to come, you want to be here, and get people in the door, and hope that they'll stay. So we just have to continue. There's a nation focus on teacher pay. There's a statewide push from the state of Missouri to get base salaries to 40, masters plus 10 to 46, and every school around is doing that. So we're all continuing to compete against each other. We just have to stay in that competitive market. We're not going to be above anything in Jackson County, and we can't deplete our local tax base either. When we look at, so this next slide here, when we look at what an increase would look like, so this is based off of this year's assessment, assess evaluations. If we did a 25-cent increase voter approval, 25-cent increase, it would bring in $597,000 of revenue. If we did a 35-cent increase, $835, 40 cents, $955, 45 cents, just a little over $1 million. So this would be this. So this is just kind of what we look at to be able to say, if we do a 60-cent transfer, it gives us $1.4 million, which kind of we feel like gives us a wash, 10 cents in capital project, and a little bit of reserve. How much of this? Where are we at in wanting to be able to give some raises?
Where does $1,000 on base move us? What is it, and I apologize, I asked that off the top of your head. Does that cost us?
Financially, so last year it was about $550,000 additional.
For every 1,000?
But that was for everybody, that was that 2.8%.
Which is the way we would do it. So if you-
Increase for every staff member.
So you're saying, so for every $1,000, it's about $590,000?
If we translate that to the percent raise for administrators, non-certified staff, everybody, if we translate that.
There's another, I know that we would lose coaches, but can we just incentivize the core classes? I mean, if someone wants to be a computer teacher, great, well, you're gonna make more money being a math teacher. So can we just increase the math teachers? staff.
We can do whatever we want, that creates a lot of animosity among staff.
Right. But
Some
stay
school districts
in
have
math.
done, some school districts
I mean,
have
I
done.
don't know, everyone wants to be a PE teacher, I wanna be a PE teacher. You know what I don't wanna be is a math teacher. But heck, maybe I'd want to if I'm getting paid 10K more.
And some of it has to do with skill set. I would be a terrible math teacher, but
Right.
there's 2 or 3 subject areas I would be good at.
I just sit in these meetings, it's a lot harder to fill a math teacher than it is a PE teacher, so let's just pay them more and keep them.
But
I mean, I
overall,
wish it was just easy, let's just pay them more and we'll keep them.
right, well,
Right,
it's just hard because we have a
Simple
set
fix.
salary
At
schedule.
least we'll,
What would
they're
happen if
coming
the
out of
school did that?
UCM, they'll
Could-
come
could
here.
Could the teachers in the district go to like their actual union and say, math teachers are making?
I mean, there are some school districts that will give, especially in those critical needs, speech, SPED, special education. There are some school districts that have given incentives for a variety of things, or a sign-on bonus for a specific content area.
But then can't you create an imbalance? Because, okay, say we did that and we got the math teachers here, and then we start losing English
Yeah,
teachers,
sure.
or we start losing different teachers.
Right.
You're just gonna swing one way or the other, and it's still gonna leave us.
Yeah, yeah, and
The hard
if you
part
don't
is
do
you-
it, if
you
you don't
just
do it equitable, you're gonna lose good staff. Because they're all important, we need every single one of them, no matter what their role is. As a school district, we've gotta have custodians, we have to have secretaries, we've gotta have paraprofessionals, we have to have every content area that there is. So, you know, we have to march forward equitably for our staff. And doing some off-tiered things doesn't cost very much to us. But overall, you know, when we look at our financial state, these are just some of the decisions we have to decide what we wanna do come April. The other issue is, you know, we talked about, our CSIP said we were really gonna focus on this last year. And with everything going on in Jackson County, we chose to do the bond, last year, tax levy this year. Met with Chief Barrett the other day, and the fire department is looking at doing something and increasing taxes this year, I don't know how much. And they're looking at doing something in April too. And so I told him I'd love to have another conversation, because I don't think it's going to do either one of us any good as a community to compete in this community.
I think it might help us. I mean, firefighters already make more than teachers. You don't exactly have to go to college for that.
So, in this proposal that we've got the 25-cent, 35, 40, 45, if we shot the moon and went for a 45-cent increase, that creates about $1 million. How much of that would you propose would go to teacher salaries?
I would say if we did a tax levy increase, we put it all in Fund 2 directly. We're telling our people, so when we earmark it directly to a fund, we can't move it, just like the debt service without voter approval. So if we are going to our voting constituents to say, we need to pay our teachers more, we're gonna increase 45 cents, we're gonna put it in Fund 2, it pays our teachers more, that's it. So it's less we
So
have
you're
to
gonna pull the
transfer.
lottery move here, though.
Well, it's less, it's
But we're not
less-
gonna pull it out of the other fund, though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, so it'd be less, so every year we transfer from Fund 1 to cover Fund 2. So if we put all of this, we transfer less, it leaves us more in Fund 1 that we can pay our non-certified staff more too.
Yeah.
So it does do both, but I would recommend that we earmark it directly to Fund 2 to be able to pay our teachers more, which is what we said we're gonna do. And Fund 1 and 2 is what equals our reserves.
Which is fairly significant. I mean, my dumb math is $1 million divided by 175 certified staff is like $6 grand a teacher.
Yeah.
I'm sure it doesn't shake out quite that high.
Right, but what we'd be looking at a 3 to 5 year plan. So if we get additional revenue, we're gonna grow our salary schedule 3 to 5 years, you know, to be able to sustain it, because, you know, we're gonna get that much in 1 year, but, you know, that's that much. If we did 45 cents at 1 million, that's 2 years worth of $1,000 in the base.
Yeah.
You know,
Or
and then we're
one year at 2,000.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so that passes the following year, you raise salaries $2,000. I mean, that's helpful, but is that significant?
On that, I mean, if I'm reading, we're still 15,000 less than the max with the masters in Green Valley. I mean, so we're still gonna lose them $15,000 more, but at least we're beating Richmond.
The formula changes though, because like I know you're thinking like the flat amount. As you start getting the years of service in steps, like it actually grossly changes those values a lot
Because
differently.
it's typically a
Because
percentage.
it's not like, if you had 2,000 to the base, like if you have 20 years in the masters, it's
Yeah.
way more than $2,000.
Yeah.
So what
But we're
I'm-
still, but we're only moving our base by 2 and we're already 1,000 behind. So I mean, it was helpful, but it was not a significant change. I mean, it's a move in the right direction,
Mhm.
but I mean, if you wanna put, if you wanna be more competitive, that's not gonna do it.
And I'm sorry, isn't just 2,000 bring us to the new state minimum of 40?
One, right now we're 39.
Yeah.
This says 38 because this is last year's report, we added 1,000, so this year we're at 39,000.
So every other school district's having the same conversation. So
Oh, yeah.
essentially, we're gonna be in the exact same boat.
Yeah,
And unless-
That's what happened last year.
You're never gonna catch up with Blue Springs. We don't have enough.
I,
That's just the
That's
thing.
what- that's my
Never
point.
gonna catch up.
that's my point.
Unless you go to
So,
state class size.
Moneyball, why are we trying to compete with
How-
Blue
Who's
Springs?
gonna pay for We're, it? we're not trying to. You can't keep up with Blue Springs.
I get
It's
that,
not
so we
that-
should
it's
be
not
able to
that
compete
binary.
with
It's-
Springfield school districts. I
But-
mean,
But you're never gonna keep up, cause who's gonna pay for it? We don't have the people we don't have enough people that live here.
And if you make it too high and go to the voters, they're just gonna say no.
Cause
it's
45
just
cents
gonna
in
be
Blue
a
Springs
flat
might
out-
be $10 million.
Right.
You don't have enough people.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
we're saying the
so
same thing.
what- yeah.
We're
You're
just
never
using,
gonna catch up.
we're
Yeah.
using different vowels here.
So what do we do, so what I need from you guys is, I need a direction to really delve deep and get some concrete figures and information. So are we interested in continuing to explore the 60 cents? And are we looking at a levy increase and do we have a threshold of where we wanna be in that 3 to 5 years? So Green Valley last year did do a tax levy transfer and a little bit of an increase, and their goal with a 5-year plan of, here's where we wanna be with salaries, and it wasn't significant, but it was earmarked for to continue to raise salaries. And there have been years here, and principals might be able to help answer, but where it was $300 added to the base, or $400.
It was
You know,
100 for the longest time.
It was what?
100 for the longest.
100 every year for a long time.
It's been 1,000 for a while. I'm not saying that's enough.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah, I know Tom, the year Tom was interim, it was 1,000, and then, but the 2 years so I know for 3 years for sure, it's been 1,000 added. But,
Plus the changes we made in giving them their hour, giving them more time. A lot of teachers saw a bump because we gave them 5 years.
Career ladder.
Yeah.
And career ladder has been helpful.
Career
and stuff.
ladder.
But,
Yeah.
but we're still
Years
asking
of
them to work
service.
more to make more,
right,
so.
right.
I think what I'd like to see is what the salary schedule looks like at each of these.
Okay.
I mean, me personally, I think.
Yeah, yeah, what's
does it
the
do
bang
what
for
does
the
it
buck?
do for a top, what does it do for a middle, what does it do for our starting, at each of these? Because I think that's easier numbers to kind of grasp. What's the immediate benefit?
What did Green Valley get? What did they get by? What did they change to, Did they get 45 cents or get a
I
dollar?
don't remember what they ran, I've got a couple samples
I
of
think it was
what.
50 cents.
I mean,
I
I'm
don't think
just
it was
curious
that
what the
much.
tolerance, if there's
I
any
know
kind
they
of a
did a
tolerance of.
transfer, and then since they did a transfer, I didn't think it was crazy amount. Does anybody remember what Green Valley increased last year? No. So I can look at, I've saved several of their advertisements as samples, so I can look and see.
I think the other thing I'd like to see is the update of where that puts us. I mean, I know you gave us last year's numbers on the levies and how we compared to other school
Yeah,
districts.
yeah.
But where does that put us?
Yeah, I'll get updated levies now that they're all set.
And I don't know if anyone else interested or sees my vision on the core side of it. We clearly approve teachers from switching from being teachers in areas that we have trouble finding to teachers that, roles that are less demanding. I can't, how is that not a?
I don't know that it's demanding, that's not, I wouldn't say that's the right word, it's more, because every job, no matter what role you're in as a teacher, is challenging.
Sure.
And there's difficult. It's more of the training in that content, because like with math and science, they're just making a lot more, they have to want to be a teacher, they're making a lot more money with math and science degrees in the business, in the industry of science and math. So that's more of that, I think, of the roadblock with finding science and math teachers.
Well, is that just a crazy idea by my part? Because I'm curious if we're gonna hear a presentation on how our art students are doing compared to the rest of the state. I know I made that sound silly, but I mean, so if we're gonna sit here in these meetings and hear how we're gonna get math scores and English scores more, and we're talking about raising money, well, we don't have to. totally get what I'm saying.
Honestly,
Part of that's our educational instruction too, and how we go about doing it. You know, it's not just the teacher in that position. Yes, they do impact how the kids are gonna learn, but it's also, are we giving them the correct information? You know, do we have the right resources and everything else? to do?
And programming to meet kids' needs, no matter, and interest needs, you know, no matter, same with extracurricular, you know. There's a lot of things that we could talk about as far as what we provide and what we don't have to provide in transportation. I've had a lot of conversations with people as we come back to school. We're enforcing the one pickup, one drop off, and people are frustrated. And I've had several reach out and say, well, we pay taxes for this. Well, we aren't bound by law at all to provide transportation. It's a courtesy we provide. It's very, very expensive. You know, so there's a lot of things that we do because it's what we need to run a successful business as a school. And providing programming to meet kids' needs, and transportation is one of those, arts is one, extracurricular, all those things go into play. And
How much would it cost be for a 1 mile radius?
well, we'd save 3 routes.
Is that something
We
there?
would pay $380 a day per route.
And part of it too, I mean, like your Blue Springs, they're starting to charge, activity fees for athletes to play sports.
That's true.
So I mean, at what point do you start looking at that kind of stuff that if you wanna do extracurriculars, that's great, we love it, but if you're gonna play sports for us, you know, it might be $200 to play, you know, because that's the world we live in. I mean, if you have any kind of kid that plays competitive anything, I don't care if it's a, you know,
Right?
dance, sport, gymnast, anything, it's crazy expensive, and so.
Right, well, I'm just looking at basic economics. There's supply and demand. There's only so many supply of teachers, and demand is equal, so how are we gonna get them? I mean,
Yeah.
Econ 101,
Yeah, well, and some of the sign-on bonuses go there too, and we haven't had that discussion, but there are some districts earmark specific content areas, and they just give one big, so they keep them on their salary schedule, but they may give a sign-on bonus for these targeted content areas, because there are.
And
How
I
many
like
t-
that. And I'm in left field here, but is it, I mean, can you just give extra steps for it?
As, yeah, as,
In other words,
in the
these-
hiring process, we
right.
can definitely do that.
In other words, we need math teachers, and so you're gonna start on
You'll start
step
at
4
step,
or
yeah.
2 or whatever
I like
it is, as
that.
Yeah.
opposed, I mean.
Yeah.
So, how many teachers did we lose last year? Wasn't it like 38?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how the number directly.
I know, but
We had more than we've had in years past, but it wasn't terrible. It looked more because we had so many retirees. We had
Yeah.
more retirees, we had 8. And then we also had between with our grant, and some movement, we added four different positions. So when you add, I mean, 12 of that was, but we still, it was a high number, if not one of the higher numbers we've had in the last few years.
And then we turned around, and I think it was good, and we're probably getting great bang for our buck, but we hired a lot of retirees that came back. I mean, do you have any figures on, this happens to me all the time, every time I lose someone, I think I'm gonna be better off, and then I go hire someone, I have to pay them more than the
Yeah.
person that I lost who had the experience. I never
We got
went.
very
But did we do-
experienced, very veteran teachers who do an amazing job.
That are
but
very
But
expensive.
they're at the end of our pay scale,
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I mean, so if we can maintain the people that are 5 or 10 years in and not have to replace them with people with 25 years of experience, we're going to be better off.
that's true.
About
Yeah.
that longevity bonuses.
Yeah.
Green Valley was 65 cents, but 40 of it was a transfer, it's only 25 cents.
25 went to the public.
That was it.
Okay.
I guess my last statement is information I would like to know is in the last year or two, what money have we had to go above and beyond for special circumstances because we couldn't find a math teacher, so now we bring back XYZ teacher that's retired and is getting paid this much. How does that roll over on just increasing?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're spending it anyway because we're not filling the role,
Yeah, and we're very pleased. I mean, we
which I'm very happy to have.
and I'm very happy that we're fully staffed. Some of the things that we've done, I think it's important to share with our community, the things we've done to our custodial pay, our secretary pay, our paras with benefits, and staff salaries, longevity. We added steps to longevity, we added steps to what was frozen on our salary schedule, and we've added increases to our salary schedule. All of those factors, we recruited great staff this past year, and we are fully staffed. So what we're doing is working, so I think it's important to share with our taxpayers what we're doing is meeting today's needs of workforce industry, and the salary demands that have been brought into light of how far behind education is and salaries being competitive. We're meeting that need and we're fully staffed, and we're excited about that. There's a lot of schools that are not fully staffed, and whether it's certified or non-certified staff. So, and we met, and we're fully staffed with 5 critical need teachers, so that's, but that is still fully staffed. So we're doing the right things to recruit in the people, but we're just to a point now where our well is dry and we need additional funding to continue what we're doing.
I think one more thing I'd like to know, nothing, a huge list of questions, but Randy's always talking about when the last time was that we actually raised a levy.
Yeah.
I've heard 1990s,
Yeah, it's.
so we're approaching 30 years.
So then obviously with that in mind, we're probably not gonna do it for another 10 years, so that needs to go into the calculation.
It does.
So maybe
absolutely.
45 cents isn't what we.
Yeah, but it's
In order
hard to
look at
get.
all of this though, is it worth having a conversation about student to staff ratio?
Right,
Or does it even
I
matter?
agree.
And we've been analyzing student staff ratio. That's why we added another eighth section of kindergarten, because we had some pretty big numbers coming in from early childhood and with needs. And so we've looked at that. We haven't replaced several positions at the high school in content areas the last few years. And those teachers feel that because now their classroom sizes are a little larger. But our middle school and high school student staff ratio is higher than elementary and primary, and obviously we want elementary and primary to be lower, but with some of the specialized classes and courses we provide at elementary or middle school and high school, it kind of throws that ratio off. But that is something Tom did a great job in the past, always looking at that, and we're continuing to look at that. And we often look at that in determining, are we replacing this position as it goes?
I mean, I
Because the
think
one
we're-
thing that you're talking about though, this is really kind of the state of education at its core. There's a lot of neighboring districts now, like at Lee Summit, for example, they are actually leasing out apartments and they've hired staff from the Philippines to teach math because they cannot find people. And like Pleasant Hill was that close to doing the same thing because they couldn't find math teachers. And so that's the nature of where education's going, because like we're talking about, unfortunately, people aren't going into education, and math and science are the two that if you get a math or science degree, why would you want to go start out making $39,000 as a teacher when you can go work at,
And we had a conversation
name
today.
your place that
Yeah.
probably Keith Recruiting.
And the state's having some
Thank you, Keith.
conversations. We had a conversation today with our new commissioner of education at my West Central meeting, and one of those conversations was, and apprenticeships and internships with teachers, and looking at from grow your own programs from the high school to an associate's degree. Can we bring people in and can we train them, and allow them, can after 2 years of an associate's degree, can you get into schools and start working as jobs as, but all of that also takes infrastructure build from your instructional coaches to your curriculum director, your principals on mentoring and training new staff who haven't gone through a full 4-year program. But what are some things, and universities have done a great job trying to get pair to classroom programs. We've got 3, I think, if not 4 paras in our district who are working on college degrees, and they don't have to go student teach and do all, they incorporate all those internships within their job already. So the state is looking at trying to do some things, but the concern is we're looking at the number of kids going into education programs at statewide and universities is telling us that what we thought would be a 5-year goal is now an 8-year goal, and that's just going to continue to grow. But
I mean, I think it's important that we look at the dollars and we do what we're doing there, but we also have to look at reasons why. I mean, in insurance we sell, don't give them a reason to shop. You have to do the same thing here, is don't give them a reason to go call Green Valley and figure out what that pay scale is and stuff. And some of those can be things that we do that don't cost a lot of money, but we probably need to point out to our teachers the good things they have here and kind of look at some of the things that maybe are irritant, that we can do different, that don't correlate to dollars, but are different than you're going to get in Grand Valley, or you're going to get in Odessa, or you're going to get
and
in.
Superintendent Advisory's talked about doing a survey about
And then talk about, hey,
yeah.
would you, how important is pay? Is it
Yeah.
worth 4 more kids in your classroom?
Yeah. Would
And
you
it-
rather a $1,000 pay raise but increase your student ratio to
Yeah.
4 more students in a class, or would you rather a $400 raise and keep your student
Yeah,
ratio.
what's
where it's
important
at.
to you, but we need to ask them
With a
what,
marketing standpoint, then we tell them we're paying them in dollars per kid.
yeah.
So you're getting some of them more dollars
Dollar
per kid.
per
Yeah,
kid.
yeah. Well, we already get them, but we're good on hours, aren't
We're
we?
giving you
Aren't we the
$4,000
shortest
per
school
kid,
district
and they're only
hours
giving
wise or
$2,000.
something? We're good on hours.
We're good on hours, we're short on days, so that's another, that is another, I don't even remember which Senate bill. This past year, there were 3 or 4 that were big, had big impacts, and one of them specifically targeted counties with charters, which happens to be St. Louis County and Jackson County. That's it. And requiring a number of days in attendance. And so we still have to meet the hours required by DESI, but now the state statute is gonna require a certain number of days, which is 7 days more than what we have. So we also have the challenge when we create a calendar to add 7 student contact days, which means 7 more days that our staff are working. Well, who's gonna come work for 7 more days without an increase in pay? So our non-certified staff, who are paid by the number of days they work, that's gonna increase our budget, but then also we're telling our certified teachers, you're gonna have 7 more student contact days, unless we reduce the number of hours we have in a day. So we have to look, which is what, we just did this, I mean, how many years ago the district did increase the day to meet the hours, and now, so it creates, that creates another layer of a state mandate that says you have to increase your days, which for us is gonna be 7 more days next year, and then we've gotta find the funding to pay our staff to work 7 more days.
What
And
does that do,
transportation
what does that do
is
for
separate.
independence that's 4 days then?
You have
That's
to
the
know
point.
voter approval.
That's the point, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the point. It was to eliminate your large schools from going 4 days a week. Your charter counties
So
are
that's
St.
voter
Louis and,
approval.
yeah, unless it's voter approval.
Well, I feel like we solved all those problems.
No,
Yeah. That was about as useful as our tax levy being set. I mean, that, you know.
well, so our
went to school to do it.
timeline here is, we're having this discussion now, we've gotta have this discussion in, October, November. We have to approve ballot language by December. And so I think it's before our December board meeting, I'll get that information too, but, so we have to approve ballot language, so we have to make a decision of what direction we're going and have some hard conversations over the next couple of months in order to approve ballot language for anything that's gonna go on the April election.
And I think that needs to be a thought. I mean, is Jackson County muddying the water? Oh, God, yeah. But we don't have time to sit around and wait for Jackson County to get their act together. That, you know,
We have to hope.
we
and
may
ass-
retire before
We have
that
to hope
happens.
and assume we're gonna receive the revenue based off the tax level we set tonight, based off the assessed evaluation they gave us. We have to hope that that's what it's gonna be, because if they go back and they revert and they do put a cap, we're gonna lose additional funding. To the tune of $1.5 million, if not more,
But I think,
each year.
I think last year we were kind of concerned about that, and I think that was a good call. But I think as that drags on,
Yeah.
we have to move on.
We have to move on. I see what you're saying. Yes, we have to move on.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you might talk to the fire district. They got a levy change 4 or 5 years ago.
Mhm.
They've
I met
had,
with Chief
They've
it's been
had-
probably a month when we met to talk about the Jackson County State Tax Commission order and all of that. So I will reach out and meet with him again and have those conversations, see where their head's at, where they're going.
One question I have is, how are these other schools able to afford, is our debt services so much higher than everybody else's? Are they just continuing their debt longer than us?
Yeah.
So they're just stretching it out, they're able to have
Right.
their tiers like this, they can pay their teachers more, but they're in
Right.
debt longer.
So last year when we went out to bid with RFQ for a bonding company, when we were looking at switching our bonding agency, when I reached out and did proposals and invitations to bid, every single one of them, I mean, there's Raymond James, LJ Hart, Piper Sandler, they all, Stiefel, they all came back and said, your debt service is high. Yeah. And one of them came back, Stiefel came back and said, you have the highest debt service in the state of Missouri. So yeah, we were aggressive. I mean, it saves, it's a good financial, it's been great. It saves and your interest.
Yeah.
And it was meeting district needs every 4 to 5 years to be able to run a bond. And a large, because we built the middle school, so that was a large bond.
But that's how
was
Odessa is
paying
paying their
off.
teachers more because their
Yes,
debt bond
yes.
is lower than ours.
Their debt service is significantly lower, so they have more going into Fund One incidental.
So that's how they're able to pay their teachers.
Correct.
But they're
Much
just,
larger district, and most of their district is not in town.
Yeah.
In town,
Yes.
those
oh, yeah,
in-town homes are owned by like 6 people.
yeah.
Our assessed
Our city's owned by
evaluation,
like 6 people.
our assessed evaluation is higher than Odessa's, so we get more local revenue than Odessa
Yeah.
significantly, but they have less debt
But
service.
they're more paying off
And plus,
debt.
it was a lot higher than ours.
Right.
So there's just,
Country homes
it's
bring in more
a hard
taxes.
shell. It really is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's how,
well,
and it's how you
country homes.
structure it,
Yeah.
it's how you choose to structure it. So we do have the leeway to do that 60-cent transfer. We just have to know that it's gonna prolong,
Our debt.
but what is our next big bond that we need to do? And is it $25 million worth, or is it smaller amounts we can do
Yeah, I
along
mean,
the way?
Do we have a projection on our buildings and where we stand that, hey, you know?
So we have a rough 5-year plan, and a lot of it's some roofing, some HVAC, a lot of concrete.
But nothing,
nothing right now.
like, we don't
nothing-
need a second elementary.
To
I
build
mean, we're
another
nowhere, we're not,
building.
yeah.
If anything, the primary maybe to add on some more classrooms, ECC is out, it's
ECC.
at max capacity. So there are, but that's not.
I thought
that's
don't we
not-
have a second story in the ECC?
The ladder up there, loft.
Okay,
Don't
okay,
get there.
so we're still,
It's tall.
yeah, I mean, we could use, I thought that wasn't predetermined as a second story? I mean,
My son plays basketball in there.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, these are good
Good
discussions.
discussion, and we'll continue. I'll get more information. If you think about other things as you go home and your brain's stewing on this, let me know so that I can bring more information next
And
meeting.
if we
Correct me
need,
if I'm wrong, just simple math, okay, so looking at this, your slide with the 25, 35, 40, 45. A 50 cent levy is 50 cents to the hundreds of dollars of your ownership of your value. So like, I just did like simple math, like if somebody had a $400,000
Oh.
house, it's $200 a year.
Yeah, so I have that,
Increase.
yeah, I have that information too, that I can bring to show you what, if we did 45 cents, an average, if you own a $300,000 home and 2 average vehicles, what that cost would be to you to a year, to a month, to a day.
Correct.
So I can bring that too, so we can see what the
Keep in
household
mind-
impact is.
isn't assessed valuation like 26% of the actual value of the house?
33.
Yeah, that'd be too easy. You gotta cut it down and then raise it
Yeah.
back up, yeah.
Yeah, I've got
That's
that,
what makes it fun.
I've
though,
got
if you
that
think about
slide.
it, Because the senior citizens are on a freeze.
yes.
So those voters, they're
And we
not
don't
gonna
know what
get
that impact
impacted
is
at
yet.
all. And honestly, I mean, look at the statistics of Oak Grove and how many homes are owned by just a handful of people. They're all rentals. So these voters, they're gonna be affected with cars. So the only people that's really gonna be affected are people that are out in the boonies like me. And so, I'm telling you, most of the people out where we are, they don't even know they can vote for school board issues. Honestly, they don't. They don't know, they don't think they can because they don't live in city. Really, those are the people that are gonna be impacted. They don't even know they have a vote.
Or the people that own all the real estate.
We're gonna
And the people that own all the real estate,
We're
they
gonna send
they
them
that
info.
gets one vote.
We're
I mean,
gonna-
you know
we're
who
gonna
it is? He gets one.
We're gonna send them info and let them know that they get to vote. They get to vote. We're gonna let them know. Next, last item that I have is
Every
MSBA
board.
conference. So the MSBA conference is held every year. Last few years, it's been in Kansas City. It's October 17th, 18th, and 19th, which is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I linked in some of the agenda. If you are interested in going, let me, Christy and I know, we'll sign you up. I'm gonna be going down just Friday and part of Saturday. So there's a big dinner and a guest speaker, motivational speaker Saturday night. But if you guys are interested in going and getting information, that's your invite. Just let us know and we'll get you signed up.
Awesome. Next regular meeting date is our regular monthly meeting, which will be October 16th, 7 p.m.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get early. Could confuse me.
Seeing nothing else on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Jim, thank you, Jeff. Motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you.
You know, if we need to meet, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, if you're going for an April date and you're pushing everything back, we may need to have a work session or something on this at some point.